Start off with Pat Jacobson, and Greg Olson will be coming to speak. You know, the first thing I always remember about Pat is, for me, is that, as the old saying, the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long. So that's what we got on Pat. He's still flaming though.
What do you mean?
Not in that sense. I wasn't saying that. No, not really. He has an ex-girlfriend. Maggie. Is it Maggie? Maggie. But we won't go into those things. So anyways, if Greg Olson come up and speak about Pat. And by the way, this is Greg Olson. For people that don't know, he's the sales manager at Enum Clogs at Power Sports Motorsports. He forgets. It's Power Sport. And he was also the tuner for many a great racer from his racing research. And people have the jerseys. We have a couple of jerseys up here. I'm sorry, I lost my jersey. Here we go. Greg Olson.
Oh, thanks. Hey, I did have the pleasure to work with a lot of people in this room. Unfortunately, you're wearing name tags, so now I can kind of figure out who's who. But, you know, I was thinking, Pat and I, a couple weeks ago, we got together and had a couple drinks, and just thinking about the sport back then, that if you think, if what I recall was correctly, I think it was late 60s, maybe 67, Edison Dye brought over Roger DeCoster and Joe Robert and Aki Janssen and Dave Vickers and Arnie Kring. I'm pretty impressed with myself that I remembered all that. But at that time, I suppose Pat, I don't know, kindergarten, first grade, something like that, you know. And I know Sean, I believe, is going to, he did a nice piece, as Sean has done on the website, on various racers and people from the industry, kind of documenting from the very early days with Pat. Pat and I were involved, you know, real strongly for about 3 years. And I think of it that motocross kind of just blew up after those Europeans came over here. And you think of that was the late 60s. And actually, I kind of saw an aside to that, and it'll make sense in a minute, that Edison Dye also sent a guy, a 17-year-old guy named Mark Blackwell, to Sweden to train with the Husky team. And he entered Pat's life later on. But when we talked about it, I started remembering things like Startup, Puyallup, Motocross West. Startup was so cool. You know, Motocross West, we'd all climb on a ferry boat and go over there, you know, and even, you know, it got to be a pretty good group. There was one acknowledged leader of that. But we had such a good time, and it was like going and hanging out with your friends, and oh yeah, there happened to be a motorcycle race. It was a neat time. But when, you know, I'd heard that Pat was telling me the other day that in grade school he'd hear Billy Joyce fire up a motorcycle living quite a ways, and he'd just haul ass over there, you know, so he could watch him ride. And you knew he really loved the sport. When I had a little one-man shop called Racing Research, and I got hired by Bellevue Suzuki. And we'd done a lot of stuff in flat track, like Hannigan and Graham, Monroe. Not so much in motocross. I mean, there was customers that rode motocross, that rode scrambles, but we were kind of looking for, you know, a young, fast guy. And I can't really remember how it happened, to tell you the truth. I can't remember if we went and found Pat or if he came a knocking. It doesn't really matter. But as is documented on the website with Sean, it started out that he was going to get one bike and 10% off on parts. We went and watched him race, and it really wasn't my call. It was the guy that turned into free everything and 6 bikes. We ran 125, a 250, and an open bike. We'd run them for 6 months, we'd flip them, and we'd run 3 more. And we had a pretty good run together for 3 years, I'd say. When we, the thing that with Pat, that, not that he was the only one, but there'd be occasional spats, you know, you're banging bars or whatever, but I don't know anybody that as a person disliked Pat. I can't remember one person from that time that said, now maybe there's a bunch of you in here and I just didn't know, there's one. By a show of hands, no. So, but I know, so we got hooked up and started racing, and we're building some stuff, and then it ran pretty good. But the thing that I remember one race, I remember a few of them, but one that really sticks in my mind. We were at Washougal, and we had a guy named Mitch Simmons riding some of our other stuff. Now, Mitch could break a cannonball. He's a big guy. He's strong. He reminds me of Randy Skyver, one of last year's inductees, that they could be in the midst of a crash, and they just either didn't know they were crashing or they just wouldn't accept that. And they just put the motorcycle back on its wheels and off they'd go. Well, Mitch was kind of like that. We were down at Washougal, and here you had Pat. He's kind of the younger guy. You had Mitch and Rick McCaffrey and Binkley, a bunch of guys who were a little older, Buck Murphy. I mean, names that I leave out, I apologize. There was a ton of people. But they're running. Mitch and Pat just check out. They are gone. Well, there was still a race to be won between two guys. Pat rides back to the pit. How do you break the steering head off of an RM motocrossing? It looked like the chopper Peter Fonda rode in Easy Rider. He rides back to the pits, you know, and we put a blanket over it, and I don't know, we were very protective of like if something broke, you know, you'd say, oh, it was an ignition problem. You wouldn't say, well, the rotor stopped spinning because the crank broke. You know, you just say it was an ignition problem. So Pat comes back with that bike, and I'm looking at him. Mitch comes back one lap later. The wheels look like two potato chips. He's coming back, and I'm looking at them, both of them, even though they're both out. They were so far ahead, it was nuts. But what could you say? You couldn't tell them to slow down, but I'm thinking like, geez, you guys, this is gonna really get expensive. But they did that. There was lots of wins in 77 like that. And in 78, and I'll get my timeline a little messed up here, but in 78 we had a motorcycle that worked pretty good, a 125. And I remember going to a national with Pat in San Diego, Trabuco Canyon. And boy, we had a high buck race team. It was Pat's Ford Courier with two 125s and all the crap we could throw in the back, you know. And I don't know if I didn't really let on with Pat, I don't think. At least I tried to be cool about it, you know. I remember there was some delay getting up to the track. And I was really nervous, you know, but I didn't want him to get nervous, so I didn't say anything. I kind of felt like we were jumping in the deep end of the pool there. But he did real well. He did good at a number of the races we went to, you know, but I don't know, it was, as he went on, gotta change my notes here. Sometimes I work at Enumclaw, like Sean said, and sometimes people will come in and they'll start talking about a race here or there, you know, and we start talking, and I always think of SIR, where Pat would go out there, he'd run 6 motos, he'd run practice and 6 25-minute motos, he'd win them all. In fact, we took a little heat for it, because I'd have a stopwatch and we'd try and have him run the last lap just as fast as he ran the second lap to build stamina. And I tell some of the kids at the store now, oh yeah, 6 practice and 6 25-minute motos, and he won them all. And they look at me like, yeah, the old guy's telling stories again, you know. But it was true. He was dominant rider. I remember, I don't recall, I think it was at the halfway point at the Nationals, which Sean will document it better, but Pat was in 5th place, 1 point behind Jeff Ward, I believe, ahead of both factory Hondas, I think. And after the race, you got the bike sitting there, leaning against the fence. And I thought our stuff, you know, it ran pretty good. I thought our stuff was pretty cool. But that was the days of real works bikes. I mean, I don't know if they shared any parts with what Pat was riding. And as the bikes were leaning up there against the fence, it just kind of hit me like it looked like somebody bought a Volkswagen to a Ferrari convention or something. It was nuts. But he was able to compete on those motorcycles. And I'm glad I didn't know till later when he talked about riding a true works bike, and he said, Greg, this is about as fast as my 250. So, kind of burst your bubble a little bit. occasionally, and Sean will go through, of course, the later time and what caused caused Pat's motorcycle career to come to an end, but Mark Blackwell that I mentioned earlier, when during that year when Pat signed with Suzuki, he was the Suzuki race team manager. And he had a good race career of his own, but then he got messed an eye up. And but during that year, we were bugging him. We go, you need this kid, Mark, you need this kid. Well, finally, they did sign him, and then we know what happened after that. And occasionally, Mark went on to work at Suzuki and then Arctic Cat. He was at Victory Motorcycles. I don't know if he's still the big dog there. I think he might be. Really neat guy. And our paths crossed a couple times in the decade or so after Pat's accident. And he'd always come up and say, Greg, how's Pat? We'd talk a little bit, and then he'd say, he always made the comment, we'll never know how fast that kid would have been.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm with you, man.
But what I can say, I was kind of thinking, okay, how do I conclude? And I was thinking, maybe we'd never know how fast he would have been. You can hypothesize that he was banging bars with Jeff Ward, things like that. But what we do know is we watched a hell of a boy grow into a hell of a man, Pat Jacobson.
I had the pleasure to know Pat. I just got to watch him race, and when I was raising my hand, I really liked him because here was this. He was 5 years younger, and back then you were a year younger. I was like, who is this punk? He's 5 years younger, and he was just cleaning everybody's clocks. Like you said, 6 motos, 3, wins every time. Oh, not every time. Pat said he was pissed off that he didn't win every race all the time. Just like, what a SL, And the thing is that it was like the first time I saw, Danny Magoo-Chandler. And Danny Magoo-Chandler went off the Mount Rainier at Puyallup, and he had that cross-up, and he took off his hand off. And he was the same thing. Like, you son of a, it's like, how can these people be doing these things when I can only have both hands on the handlebar and not do a cross-up? Try not to crash. But when you watch Pat, it was just sort of like, this is the next wave. I mean, all of us are now has-beens when Pat came in. And that's why I really hated you at the time. You put my motocross career to a real quick finish. But after that, Pat has made, it's not remarkable, but Pat he plays in the championship tennis tournaments all the time. When I played against him, and he just kills my ass again. But he also played basketball, and he plays golf, and he shoots about a 110 when he's in good shape. Is it 110? 105? 100? Easy course. And I was trying to ask him, but he's always challenged himself every day about doing better and going further in his life. And like I said, when he crashed, that wasn't the end of his life. It's just another part of it. And now we're going to give out the trophy. But before we do this, I want to be able to thank Ted Duvall and Garrett Duvall for making these trophies for the last 3 years, because every year they get better and better. I'd like a hand up for the Duvalls for designing these trophies. Stand up, Garrett. Here's our first vice president. Okay, now Pat gets to get the award, get a picture, and Denise gets to speak. Yeah, I can speak for him. No.
Pretty cool.
Don't roll anywhere. Yeah. You do know how to use this, don't you?
I thought about writing a speech or doing something, and there's really nothing I can say except thank you, everybody, everyone. I could tell my family thank you so much for everything. I could tell Billy, Maury, I could go on with everybody, the Osters, so many people, Duke, Dallas, Nyblood, everybody. There's no way I could say thank you enough. I did what I love to do. My brother, Preston, thank you, man. At a race, one of my very first races on a 100 Yamaha. And I was sitting at the starting line and down at the straddle line. And my brother come up to me and goes, "Hey man, you're just as fast as any of these guys." And I was so nervous, but I thought I could beat him. But my brother, I couldn't beat him, but at that time. But I don't mean to sound like that because, you know, I respect every rider. I respect the sport, and Greg, thank you, man, for that wonderful thing. You know, you talked about everything, and I care about people. You know, people is what counts. Obviously, Bruce has had a much better career. I mean, longer, better. You know, hey, you know, I didn't win championships. I won a few series, yes, in all three classes at sometimes, but I didn't win series. I didn't win championships, but I won some people as friends and a family of racing. And you know, I can't. There's no way I can say thank you enough. Chuck, buddy, we had a good little run. You know, Chuck was my mechanic when I went on the nationals, and Suzuki did call me. It was after the third national in '79. I got a sixth and a third, and Suzuki did call me. I had a friend that come up to Bellevue Suzuki. That's where I got started with Bellevue Suzuki. I didn't go searching for you guys. You didn't come from me, but there was an intermediate person that helped us there. I remember a lot of great times, and I don't want to tell a bunch of stories. Pam, I love you. You're my sister, Pam. She traveled. She was there through everything. My accident, yeah, I got hurt, but I got hurt doing something I love to do. And with everybody's support here.
You're still the greatest.
No. You know, Billy, you know, I can't say enough about how much you showed me, and my brother. Those two guys helped me so much. But it's not about that. It's about your parents. It's about your family. It's about, you know, being a family. I mean, togetherness, you know, and the sport. Yes, I love racing bikes. I love flat track. I love road racing. I love, you know, it's a wonderful thing. And it brings people together. Thank you so much. Sean, of course. Sean. You know, without him, you know.
I shaved my hair and dyed my beard. Try not to be noticed.
Anyways, thank you very much. You know, this is a wonderful trophy. It's an honor. It's more of an honor to have friends and people in my life. And thank you so much. You helped me so many years. It's okay. It's all good. Thank you.
Oops. Give me our last shot.